to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. Today, quite the early one. It is, well, early. It is 11 a.m. and today we're talking about various different things. One of them being learning, one of them being meaning in life, one of them being just some people, some quotes and some whatever. But still, I think useful can be useful, depends on your situation, of course. But yeah, let's get right into it. Material is better than the method. I am currently learning for an exam that I'm having in around 1.5 weeks. I'm doing quite fine, but every time when I'm about to learn something, every time when I start learning something, it is always like, is this material that I'm having good enough? Should I use this method? Should I use that method and whatever? And quite often, as well as this time, I change things in the middle of it and I do things in a different way because I come to the conclusion that it might be better to do it in this way or to do it in that way, and just mixing things up and so on and so forth. The material that you're using is crucial. Of course, when I'm not having all of the information that I should have, the product, so the outcome of the exam, might not be that great. Even though I've used this great method that this fucking dude used, this amazing champion in memorization and whatever, it is still not gonna be that useful because the material, the stuff that I was learning was wrong, or was just not all of it, or was just fucked up. It makes sense when one is thinking about it, it really does make sense. But it kind of plays into this whole scheme of, okay, I'm trying this new fucking shortcut out. I'm trying to do this, that, and the other thing because I don't want to learn 10 hours a day. Even though maybe really deep down we all know that this might be the only thing that we should be focusing on one hand, and on the other hand, the only thing that kind of works, because we all know that there has to be some work done. There has to be done something, actually putting in the work and not only reading the book, so that we can actually get this outcome that we want to have and that we are willing to achieve. Pain can be a source of meaning. It immediately, once again, reminded me of Viktor Frankl. If you do not know Viktor Frankl, psychoanalyst, psychotherapist, I actually never ever know, quite in general, not necessarily in general, but quite often what people are doing, what their profession is. But he was in a concentration camp back in the days, fortunately back in the days at this point, and he survived it. And he survived it because of, basically a set of reframing the world and a set of thinking patterns, thinking habits of basically seeing meaning and creating meaning. Because in the end, we all are creating meaning. For some people, it maybe was created very early on in their life. They're doing their sport, they're doing whatever the fuck, and they are just only doing that, and they're happy doing that, and this is the meaning. A bit of problem is many athletes tend to get quite depressed when they have to retire. They have only had this one thing and they have only done this one fucking thing, and now all of it is gone and now everything is fucked up. And what do they do now? What can they do now? I think it makes sense to have multiple pillars of meaning, as well as just, when you're investing in something, that you're not going to put all your money into one basket, and whatever you're doing, not putting all your stuff in one basket, unless you know that it is going to be worthwhile, because it might really backfire. So the pain of learning, the pain of studying, maybe the pain of working a job that you really do hate, maybe you can find a source of meaning in there. Maybe you can find some meaning in there. Maybe you can figure out a way in which this is not as shitty as it is, or as it is now. It is basically reframing, and today actually quite a lot is reframing things. Either it is reframing your thinking, reframing the way you see the world, and or many more things. Long term versus short term is crucial in various ways. Long term versus short term, when it is about investing, when it is about learning, of course, I should be learning in a way, or we should be learning in a way that things are more short term than they are long term, so that we have, this chains, this, let's call them thought chains, maybe. It's not a word, no, I totally made that up, but using information that I'm already having and combining it with the new information, for example, that I'm willing to learn, so that it just sticks better. And it is probably also going to be more long-term, instead of just, trying to 1 minute before I'm writing the exam, memorizing, or at least trying to memorize, because it's not going to work anyway, trying to memorize all the fucking facts that, maybe in the end are not really useful. So thinking long-term in whatever we are doing. And as I was thinking about it, I have realized, and I've seen that it might be applicable to way more things than I thought it is. Like, yes, investing, of course, and yes, just not eating shit all day long and drinking all day long. Yes, it makes sense. We all know that, but maybe it's also about learning, and this making me learn in a different way, maybe also work in a different way. That, and there is a quote which I found pretty interesting, and it was on I think it is Tim.blog site, so Tim Ferriss' site, the author and also podcaster. I'm gonna read it. I am here today to cross the swamp, not to fight all the alligators. By Rosamund and Benjamin Zander, Z or C, I never ever know, Ander. And I thought like, because before I read, should I do this? It was about decision making. Should I do this or that thing? And it makes sense to choose this thing that may not immediately be nice, but maybe afterwards, after you have accomplished this, after you have learned all of these things, you feel way better. It makes sense on one hand. On the other hand, I also have to say, I am here today to cross the swamp and not to fight all the alligators. So choosing this route of having it difficult, but in the end it is better, versus maybe the whole process is quite okay and the outcome is also okay, I think first of all really depends on the situation, of course, and also really depends on preferences. And also what you're doing, what your main thing is. When I'm thinking about like, okay, this decision that I'm having to make, and it is not the main source of happiness in my life, why should I do it in the hardest way I can and kind of quote unquote get the most out of it, instead of doing this thing that I think I'm having to do, or that I'm just not valuing that much compared to other things at the time. Of course things change, and of course things just alter. Why shouldn't I be doing it in a quote unquote mediocre way and get also a mediocre result, or just doing something that is a bit easier and I still get a bit out of it? Do I really also or always have to make my life that fucking hard? Do I always have to do this great shit that I then can tell my fucking mom, not my fucking mom, but my mom? Is it that important? Is it that important to always have it that difficult? And also being present when you're making this decision, thinking about right now, in the future, is this going to be worthwhile? Does this make sense for me to do? Should I be doing this in some sort of way and do something on the side? Should I have my, and I fucking hate this word, side hustle? Because everyone is using it. I don't know why everyone is using it. I don't know why everything apparently is a side hustle at this point. Like, I don't know, me sitting here, somebody would say this is a fucking side hustle. Is it? Not really. I'm just sitting here trying to push out something that might be useful for somebody, and also honing my own skills of talking and researching and writing things down, and also presenting things hopefully in a way that is a bit more interesting than the kind of usual presentation in school that is always that bullshit, and period. Being the best in the world is great. Being this top 1%, being this top 10%, whatever it might be. Of course it is great, of course it is good, also because there's a lot of money in it and so on. But what about being the best for the world? As I was reading it, I thought, well, this really makes sense. I may not be the best in the world in whatever I am willing to do. Of course, I think we all are good at something, and we might be able, if we put in the hours, if we put in the work, to be actually the best in the world in this certain thing that we're already pretty good at. But what about being the best for the world? And what does this even mean? Does this mean that I'm going to be nice to everyone? Maybe not necessarily. I don't necessarily think that being nice to everyone all the time is going to be that useful. When somebody's asking me for my opinion, my honest opinion, maybe the nice answer is a lie. Maybe this not nice answer is just what the person needs, at my point of view. But no, by the way, it's not always about me. It's not always about us. Most often it is about the other person and, what is useful for them. Is it useful for me to tell them that, or tell this person that he or she is looking bad today? Well, not really. Is it useful for them when I'm just an asshole and shitty to them today? Not really. So, being the best for the world, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for your life? What does that mean for the other person or the other people that you're interacting with on a daily basis? And in general, which kind of is the scheme of today for whatever reason, reframing the world. As I said before, reframing our thinking patterns, reframing the way we see things, our worldview, the world basically as it is. Because as I've read in The Art of Probability, which was actually the book by Rosamund and Benjamin Zander, or Sander, whatever. As the title says, it is about probabilities, It's basically about decision making, and also quite a lot, at least this was the summary that I was kind of reading. I was just, reading a few lines by James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, if I am not mistaken. But seeing meaning in things, seeing meaning in even pain is one thing. Trying to be the best for the world versus the best in the world, which is also a complete reframe, at least for me. Long-term versus short-term, reframing once again, and also asking oneself many questions. Not yesterday, I think the day before, maybe the day before, I have talked about questioning and also Socratic questions that Tim Ferriss also mentioned, which basically is asking quite a lot of questions, and asking questions for the questions and really getting quite deep in why we're doing things, how we should be doing things, if what we're doing makes sense, and many more things. Pretty useful, pretty cool, also because questioning oneself, questioning one's actions and one's thoughts might be just the way to do, or might be the thing to do to feel better on a daily basis. And also writing it down, I think, is quite crucial for this process. As it is with learning, I think just reading things and then maybe going through them in your head is not necessarily what you're doing in an exam, especially when it is written. You're having to write things down then. So I tend to write quite all of the things that also today, what I'm willing to talk about, I have written it down because I think also the act of writing kind of makes me memorize things a bit better. But on the other hand, writing, and there might be a future episode on that, is quite good practice for clearer thinking. So also by writing things down, you have to be quite precise. You can't just use multiple words. You can't mix up words because you're having to write it down. Anyway, so maybe reframe your world today a little bit to see the beauty and maybe even just the bad. I don't think that it always has to be good. Does everything always has to be good? I think it is also okay to have some moments, maybe even months of grief when it is quote unquote useful and or appropriate and or whatever, but it shouldn't be the norm. I think when we're all thinking about it, life is quite good, especially when you are in a situation like I am in Europe or North America or whatever. Is there really that much to be bothered by? Is there really that much to be pissed off by? And of course, we all have our subjective view of pain and of mental and physical pain. So being like, okay, those kids in Africa are having it way worse than we are having, so don't be so depressed. This is not useful. It really isn't, and it should never quite be said to somebody, especially when you're talking in person, that is depressed and is feeling really bad about whatever it might be. It is just not useful. So being the best for the world and being the best for this person Period. With that being said, I'm hopefully going to see you next time. So bye-bye. And I hope I've been able to share something of value to you. If so, maybe you leave a like, maybe you leave a subscription. It is a podcast, so it is available on all the platforms that you might be listening to podcasts to, or on to, whatever. And also the YouTube. So if you want to see my face when I'm talking, then you can also check that out. So